All right. So, welcome to this session, Demystifying Network AV. And so, we're going to start the session off with our sponsor of this one, Extron. And thank you, Andrew, for joining us today. Take it away.
Great. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with everyone today. So my name's Andrew Evans. I'm one of the directors of product marketing over at Extron, and part of the categories that I oversee happens to be the AV over IP technologies. So things like the NAV, AV over IP, encoders, decoders, as well as the lecture capture equipment, SMP 401s, SMP 352s, that sort of thing. And so just really wanted to kick off this session and just give kind of an intro to AV over IP, to open up the floor even to a couple of questions if you've got them, but really just to say thank you for going AV over IP, going with devices on networks. It's a really great opportunity, particularly for higher education facilities such as the ones that you're all involved with, where you can really leverage some of the infrastructure that you already have within your campus. And so what we really are seeing is that AV over IP is giving people the opportunity to bring these systems in and to run your video, your audio, your control signals all over the campus network that's already in place. You're not having to stand up these separate standalone circuit switched type infrastructures. And so when you start doing that, you start really being able to grow at scale. You're able to take advantage of a lot of things like remote management. Uh, I think I can probably safely say that most, if not all of you, are being asked to do more with fewer resources, whether that's money, people. They don't just grow on trees, and we don't have an endless supply of them. And so when we start taking advantage of our infrastructure and placing all these devices on the network, being able to remotely support a classroom, to know that it's online and it's ready for a professor to teach in that space without having to get up from your desk. It really brings a lot of opportunity to deliver a technology that becomes transparent to the instructional staff. And I think that's probably one of our goals that we all have here, is that the technology doesn't become an impediment to the education and to the content delivery to the students. And so that's really one of the things that I think is just phenomenal about the integration of these products onto the network. Then you start getting into some of the other things that help us to justify maybe getting additional resources or keeping the resources we have. Things like room usage statistics, being able to understand, was this space booked and was it fully utilized? Or was somebody in there just kind of camping out, working on a project by themselves, even though it was a 100-seat lecture hall? That's probably not the best use of that space. And so as we start really aligning these technologies into our backbones and into the metrics that are available to us, it really becomes a more holistic picture of how our facilities are being used and where those gaps might be that we need to shore up, whether that's through additional support, people, with additional technologies, products, whatever that might be. It gives you some of that data that you could then leverage and turn into a really compelling story that helps support your positions there at your universities and your colleges.
Hey, thanks,
And so,
thanks, Andrew. Really quickly, I want to throw something to you because I'll give a little bit of context here. We did, I think it was actually 1 year ago. It might have been this same thing, or it was somewhere around that. We did a session as well on AV over IP. I was really taken back by the fact that over 50% was still saying, 50% of the attendees still said, "Thou shalt not put stuff on my network." All right. And I was shocked. That was even just a year ago. Okay. And obviously, I've been a huge proponent of it for forever, it seems. But can you talk really quickly from your point of view? Because you see this all the time. You're onboarding new people all the time into AV over IP. So can you talk a little bit like that trend you're seeing in movement? Are you seeing more acceptance? And then, horrible host asking a multi-point question. Um, what are the biggest risks or things that you're having to tell people that are coming on and want to make that change from your point of view to make it easier for them?
Sure. So even though it might have been a year ago that somebody said it was about a 50-50 split, in the 365 days that have elapsed since then, we might be at a 52-48 split. I mean, it really is astonishing to me the fact that we still are seeing so many air-gapped AV over IP systems. And I will say that there are lots of AV over IP systems being deployed, but I make that distinction to say that many of them are segmented, isolated, completely different infrastructures with maybe a little bit of out-of-band management that ties the two together. The the percentage of truly converged enterprise networks running video audio control over the same network that is supporting voice over IP, file transfer, research is still not where I think it needs to be. But I think we're getting there. And I think these are the kinds of things that help us, opportunities like this that we're having today, educational opportunities, putting information out there in white papers. I think those things help assuage some of the concerns that a lot of the people still have. And Joe, to your point of, what are the impediments? Honestly, the multicast traffic. There are a boatload of really great network people out there. But when you start talking about real-time delivery of multicast traffic that is spanning the entire campus network, the easiest answer that they have to give you is no. And
Mhm.
then from there, it's the uphill battle of showing them here are the resources, here are the reasons why, here are the benefits that you're going to gain by doing it. And not only that, we've got a team of people that are available, whether that's a team within your own AV groups or through vendors, backing you up and saying, we've got this. Don't worry. We can make sure that your network is ready for this level of multicast traffic. In a lot of ways, it's not different from, oh, I'll probably show my age here a little bit. Uh, Late 90s, early 2000s, when Cisco came in and said they had the replacement for the PBX, and people went to voice over IP, and now people wouldn't dream of putting in a PBX, right? I think we're going to see that same kind of cycle here with the network. Right now, we're still fighting a few PBX holdouts, and they're going to start to see the light, and they're going to start making those transitions. I think that 26 through probably the next year or two, we're going to start to see that velocity pick up.
Great. Yeah, no, I love that. And I think you're right on it. Do make sure that can you drop your email into the chat too, just so people have it if they want to be able to follow up with you as well and continue those conversations. And just so everyone knows, when I hear the word Extron, I think two words, four syllables, popcorn ice cream. Okay, so when you're on Ball Road and you go to the headquarters, popcorn ice cream, when you head there for training, probably the best training there is. It happens right there. And you follow it up with popcorn ice cream. So there we go. That being said, let's jump to our other esteemed guests and panelists today. Oh, do I go current employer or alma mater? This is a tough one. This is a tough one. You know what? Alma mater was there first. Vinny, please introduce yourself. Tell people who you are, what you do.
Hey guys, name is, can you guys hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up, please. All right. So name is Vinny Sabharwal. I've been in the AV industry for about 22 years. Spent about 11, 12 years at Extron. Then I went to Panasonic. Now I'm at USC, and I'm the architect here. My role is to pretty much go out there, talk to faculty, students, find their problems, their pain points, And based on those pain points, I come up with some ideas that we find right now in the AV industry, bring them back, and then try to connect the two and see if they'll work. Um, Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I like this topic because there's a lot of issues that we see based on what Andrew mentioned. It's been crazy out there with all the network patching and all the updates that network security is giving us. So I think that's another topic I would like you to bring up, Andrew, that we need to make sure that we are working hand in hand with the network security team as well. Again, this is Vinny here from USC.
Yeah, and we are definitely going to get into network security. Next up, Nick, please tell people who you are, what you do, and how great of a department leader you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Sieracki, senior engineer on the DTS Digital Spaces team under Joe. I've been at UCLA for about a year and a half. Before that, I was at Zoom as a distinguished architect, where I focused on real-time media transport technologies and sort of next generation audio and video for upmarket solutions. Before that, spent the majority of my career at Dolby Laboratories as their principal solutions architect, focusing on what Dolby does best, which is audio. In this current role, I help the team with solutioning sort of next generation technical paths for the various workflows within digital spaces.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to stick with you, Nick, on this first one, because just for everyone to at least level set when I have you, and actually when I have all of you, define AV over IP, just because I think there's a lot. This is demystifying, and a lot of what it is. And I'm going to start by saying that it's not just using a network cable, an Ethernet cable, instead of an HDMI cable. It's not necessarily just going point to point, even though I see that with people. So in just kind of a bucket it, define AV over IP for me.
I would say that it is adding the application of audiovisual experiences over common IP-based networking technologies.
Okay, and then you have to define IP then.
Internet protocol. So essentially the way the internet works, how different computers and different things talk to each other. Essentially the backbone of the internet.
Yeah. We're doing the Bradford Bend rule here. So anytime there's acronyms, we got to define them. Vinny, same thing to you. Define AV over IP for us.
I feel from the AV audio, video, and control perspective, we could put things on the network on the switch, but that does not mean that you can control everything or even communicate to everything remotely. So for me, IP or not, we are using cloud or not, irrespective of that, if tomorrow technology goes into using everything RF, the goal here is for us to be able to control and manage things remotely. So it's pretty much for the I would say as an architect, I feel irrespective of where the communication goes tomorrow, AV over IP or AV over RF or AV over whatever comes up in future, I think the goal is for us to make it more manageable and remotely control everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Andrew, throw it to you. Define it in a bucket for us.
Sure. I will echo both what Nick and Vinny have said. I agree with where they're going with that. And I guess to expand on it just a little bit from my perspective, I would say AV over IP is also a contrast to a circuit switched infrastructure. So where you might have uncompressed audio, uncompressed video going down dedicated pipelines, dedicated infrastructure. When you get into some kind of signal over IP, whether that's control, video, audio, you are now taking that same information and more than likely you are compressing it in some manner, whether that's lossless or not. It's going to depend on how you do the compression. And then you are packetizing that into smaller bits of information, and you are sending that down a pipe that now is sharing that bandwidth with other signals. And so for me, AV over IP is packetized information going down shared bandwidth infrastructure.
Good, good. I love that. I think that the general overview for everybody. kind of gets the idea of what we're looking to do on our campuses is obviously switching and we're putting things on the network, but it's more than that. It's actually being able to take our as already mentioned, remote management, being able to control and understand the traffic that's going across our campus, and also the the control the end product for it and scale it. I think that's really the biggest thing that we often think about. So Vinny, to you, let's start with design considerations, right? If someone is looking to move from maybe a legacy system and you want to go, I want to now move to AV over IP, what are the main considerations someone needs to take into account to be successful in that transition?
I could spend 3 hours on that, but
Let's not
considering the
let's
time,
5 minutes.
I'll go with a few minutes, right? So even less than that, I would say it starts with the present situation based on where your system sits right now. If you're considering going from completely a non-IT kind of an individually controlled individual system, so you have to look at the present situation and where you're trying to go. Plus, not just where you're trying to go, it's where the technology is heading, the trends, right? If we are starting from a point where we had nothing but individual classroom controls, then I think the biggest consideration would be to have to weigh the impact on your IT network, right? If your network is capable of handling that much bandwidth, if your network security team is able to keep everything secure, right? Biggest thing is the bandwidth, right? If your network is not going to be able to support um, the streaming that you want to do, especially what Andrew is saying, uncompressed and stuff, it is not going to give you any good throughput, right? So from my perspective, the biggest one is that. Beyond that, what I always keep in mind is which I mentioned, the security side. Um, on this path, when you have everything set up, you already worked with your IT, your servers are going, everything is running smoothly. Then what do you do with updates? 6 months from now, Linux is going to come up. They're going to say, now you are going from Alma Linux to Rocky Linux, right? What do you do? Your server is based on Alma Linux, and now you need to switch to Rocky Linux, right? And that's something that your architecture team, IT architecture team, they want for security concerns. I think those things have to be considered in advance to see where's the roadmap going for Linux. Same thing with Windows servers, right? All those things have to be considered. So what I feel is with cloud, that thing becomes much easier. Now you don't have to look at the on-prem servers if you put things in cloud, right? But at the same time, looking at your current situation and where you want to be, there's going to be an intermediate kind of a state where you're going to sit today for next couple of years, right? So that's something you have to consider. Make sure weighing what do we have and where we're going to go, and kind of measuring and weighing what needs to be done in the interim.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Nick, same question to you, and kind of expanding on that. Those design considerations, but then also kind of the requirements too, as you're kind of scaling this through.
Yeah, I think Vinny's 100% right. Bandwidth is definitely number one. In my perspective, number two is really understand the topology of the network, where segmentation lies, where are the network boundaries. Deploying AV and over IP on what's called a flat network where anything can talk to anything poses incredible risk. To Andrew's point earlier about the scary word multicast that most network engineers just use as their checkbox, no, we're not doing it. So understanding how it's segmented, potentially have a say in how you segment the network, and also understanding what traffic could you be competing with within your segments that you plan on routing this rich media, large packetized data.
Yeah. I want to expand on that because I think understand the topology of it. Absolutely. But a lot of it, as AV teams, we don't control that, right? That might be a completely different, in our case, infrastructure group, same thing at USC, the infrastructure group. Both campuses very lucky to have a great group to work with, but we hear from our peers that's not always the case. So sticking with you, Nick, what are those things? How do you start that conversation and make sure that we actually, stand our ground or look like professionals when we're having those conversations, those smart conversations.
Yeah, so I think building those relationships with the network guys and the network teams to essentially provide clear requirements on what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do that. So you can kind of start to have that conversation where there you can discuss gives and flows and how the best way to accommodate something that might be sort of outside their traditional network design mindset, but that it would really end up benefiting everybody in the long run.
Yeah. I love it. And Nisha, I love your tell it that multicast is not broadcast traffic. Good comments there. Keep those things going on the cons. Vinny, to you, and then I want to go to you, Andrew, on your thoughts on this.
Sure. So I love the point that Nick had made. Relationship is the key. Also, I want to add is that there is this lack of clear definition for those. I've been on the IT side where I was receiving the requirements, and what I feel is the desired outcomes need to be clearly defined by us. If we do not define them clearly, then there's no way anybody can define a path towards that, right? So in my experience working with them, first thing they ask for is a set of requirements, which starts with the desired outcomes, and then you work with them together to find a kind of a balanced state where you say, this is what we want, and this is what you can give us with the standards that we have today. That's the compromise we have to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew?
Yeah, definitely a lot of this comes down to the architecture of the network. Nick was mentioning some of that, and Vinny with the bandwidth commentary as well. Understanding where the query is going to be. Are you doing L3 to the edge? How are you going to handle the uplinks when you're in a multi-switch application? That's a very different conversation than deploying 48 endpoints on a single switch somewhere. And so understanding not just the intention or the goal for the AV system, but what the infrastructure is behind it to back it up is really one of the first conversations that has to take place. And so making sure that you've got those strong relationships with the IT side of the organization is really what's going to make or break the success of an AV over IP deployment.
Yeah. And you said L3, so you have to define layer 3 and tell people what the differences are. Can't bring up acronyms and not define them. Those are the rules, house rules.
Fair enough. So when you start going into a layer 3 network, you're going to be talking about how the data is routed. And when we start talking about pushing layer 3 to the edge, instead of having an L2 plus, layer 2 plus network, when you're in that layer 2 kind of mindset, you've got a querier that's located somewhere on the network, and all of your multicast traffic is being routed to that querier and back out. Whereas L3 is a much more efficient way of managing that traffic, and you're not going to have to route all of that traffic through the querier itself. And where that becomes a big challenge is as your AV over IP system starts to scale. If you were to try to deploy an L2 plus type system and have a querier located in a MDF somewhere, you might find yourself routing tens. So MDF, IDF, main distribution frame, intermediate distribution frame. So where you are hiding all of your IT gear.
It's the closet in the hallway when no one has keys to it.
Or the person that has keys to it is on PTO for the week, paid time off, and isn't able to open up that closet for you for another week. Meanwhile, you've got classrooms down, and all you needed to do was reset power. So yes, there are challenges. And since we're talking about bandwidth, and I had mentioned compression earlier, one of the things that you have to understand, and I think this is to Vinny's point earlier, when you start talking about the requirements of the system, is what's good enough from a performance perspective. Are you wanting to prioritize lots and lots of video streams at low bit rates, or do you really need to deliver uncompressed video or as close to visually lossless video as possible because you're doing medical simulation, or maybe it's a art history class that needs to see 10-bit colors. So a lot of those things are going to influence the way that you design your AV over IP architecture.
Absolutely. No, thank you for those definitions. I think a lot of times we often we overlook some of those things and kind of make the assumptions. And I think a lot of what we want to do and what's shown success for us is coming to the table with our network teams and actually being able to kind of hold our own and know that, hey, we understand the problems. In here in the chat, Phil put in, get off my network, right, and get off my lawn idea, right. And a lot of times that happens because they don't trust that we can actually be reliable and we can be good stewards of that network. I'm going to give a little bit of insight here too. For a good way to bring your network team on board is not just approach them and say, oh, by the way, I have these devices I've got, that need XYZ and I need, 1 gig bidirectional in all ports and by the way, never mind, and before you start making all those demands, network. So, all right, there are network people on here. We are recording. Never mind. Okay, so don't show this to my team. Network stuff is boring. Okay, like they don't get to be part of the fun stuff, right? The stuff we do is forward facing. It gets the nice case studies and everything. But bringing them in and going, look, we want to partner together and bring them into the project is an essential part of it, right? And let them kind of share in that glory with you. And it's amazing how they want to come in because usually people are always just either complaining about the network, complaining about Wi-Fi, or making demands, not partnering and saying you're an essential part of this project that's going to make it successful and move our institution forward. That changes the whole mentality of the team. And we found that really is one of the biggest wins you can make to bring your network team on board. So, all right, we talked about the back kind of what it is, network infrastructure. Let's talk about the benefits of why. And then Aaron did say in here on one of the questions, maybe we should say where it's not the right solution, but why would you want to, and where it is appropriate, and if you want, where is it not? So Nick, I can go to you first on that. What are the main benefits of why we'd even want an AV over IP solution compared to a legacy system?
I would say cost. It's significantly cheaper not to have to buy and run all of your own essentially backbone equipment to support connectivity and transport for all your various AV endpoints. Being able to leverage an existing cost that already exists for other use cases within the IT organization is a very large benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, I'm going to add to that, remembering that we also don't want to kick the cost, the cost can down the road. A lot of times we think, all right, we're not having to do a lot ourselves. Maybe we're getting rid of a certain amount of equipment, right? We can make racks smaller by using it. We're not having to, but if we're adding extra, they're having to add extra network switches in the closet, in that MDF, right? If they're having to add more blades to all these, well, then we're just kicking the cost to another department. And we also want to be wary of that as well and come to the table understanding that, that side of it too. Vinny, same question to you.
I agree with Nick. Cost is the main one, but I'll also add time, scope in the mix also, and scalability, right? Your scope and scalability, they go hand in hand. Time wise, I would say it does save you a lot of time in deployment. Scope, whatever you define, doing it without having AVIT in the mix is gonna increase the scope for sure. Having to run the wiring, having to install things which don't need to be installed there, and I feel scalability is future looking perspective, right? Where you're looking at the system from the perspective that I need to, for example, add 200 licenses of something today, but in future I might need to scale up to 1,000 licenses, right? So I think those 4 aspects, I would say the cost, time, scope, and scalability are the 4 things that I look at.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you on that. Also noting, like, if we look at all of the equipment, in fact, just out at ISE, a couple of weeks ago, there were a lot of little boxes and things that didn't have anything but a network port on it, and it didn't do anything but go on a network. So when we look at our manufacturers, look at the direction they're also designing. There's going to be a point where they're doing it. And I'll also say one of the big takeaways from ISE this last week wasn't necessarily that there were a lot of new products or advancements. what people were showing was ability to work well with other players, right? And that so far, where there's no more little ecosystems, being able to have, management of our platforms, being able to monitor it and support it remotely, right? That was the biggest change. Now, remote management doesn't show well on a show floor wall, but those were the biggest changes and not necessarily a lot of equipment differences. So I think that's a big part of it. I'm gonna stick with you, and I'm gonna go to all of you on this one though. But Vinny, I'll start with you on this because you brought up early on, I think the first question, cybersecurity, right? We've worked now. We've got our network team on board. We don't want to be the hack. All right.
Exactly.
And we are a risk as soon as we go on that network, which is probably why a lot of schools are getting no's, of why we're not
Um,
there. So talk about cybersecurity, kind of your point of view on that one.
I would just say based on the trainings we all have to take on cybersecurity, just that if you remove that, that would be like 10 hours of my day that that I'll be saving, right? So pretty much every discussion that's about a device that's sitting on the network has to be about security right now because we all know why, right? The biggest item in my plate all the time is to make sure that there are no back doors in the hardware side. There are no kind of patches on the server side that are needed. So my time for the network stuff is mostly spent in making sure that there are no back doors into our system, right? Working with the network security people, when they give us their desired outcomes, this is one of the first ones they ask us is how often can you patch your servers, right? So for us, if it is a control system server, if it is an AV systems server, the issue that I feel is we cannot be as quick as IT wants us to be. So in our case, when they give us a patch, we have to apply it on our test system and then test it and then apply it to the campus. Um, that takes time, right? It's a month, 2 months later. So we have to keep working with IT people, make sure, tell them that it's still in progress. If the control system is failing, it's causing some issues, we go back to the control vendor and then work with them, and so on and so forth, right? So there's a lot of other gotchas we have to take care of while working with the security team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, Andrew, I know you need to bounce pretty quick, but I do want to go to you and just same thing. What are the cybersecurity things to think about?
Sure. So certainly I couldn't agree more that one of the, I'll say top three, just to give ourselves a little breathing room, concerns with AV over IP is whether or not it's going to expand the threat surface for the cybersecurity incident happening at your schools. And I think that's why we probably are still seeing, that 50% of people air gapping their AV over IP from their campus networks. It's a way that they can mitigate some of that risk. Uh, but I will say that vendors are really putting a lot of focus into that. And the ones that are distinguishing themselves are the ones that are spending that engineering effort to make sure that not only are they meeting the networking standards as far as adhering to protocols for that traffic going across the network, but also are doing the cybersecurity side where there is constant penetration testing happening as part of the development of firmware, where there's regression testing happening, and so that they're able to identify any kind of flaws that might be in the system to patch them and to document them and put those firmware releases out so that customers can stay on top of them and get their systems patched in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the things that really has distinguished, just as a little promo here, Extron as one of the ones that really has done well on enterprise networks. We've got a team that backs up our AV over IP products, and they are constantly looking at the cybersecurity side of it to the point where there's outside validation of how well our products perform in those types of applications.
great. Yeah, absolutely agree. Thank you very much for all the time and everything. Nick, security is an issue.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to just double click on something Andrew said. The penetration testing, while extremely useful in a critical requirement for information security teams, can also pose quite a bit of challenge for AV equipment on a network. Because a lot of the gear on an AV network listens on what's called non-standard ports. And what that means is it doesn't use a common connection method that most computers or other endpoints on an IP network use to talk to each other. And because of that, sometimes they might be flagged as false positive, or sometimes they're just not able to handle the constant scanning of that port and then cause what's called a DDoS, essentially a denial of service, where the device kind of locks itself down, thinking it is being attacked, even though it's a common security practice to protect itself. So having this conversation with the security teams, working with them to schedule these types of testing so everybody knows when it's happening. So if a device does go down because of a port scan issue, that it can be recovered by a team proactively.
Yeah, absolutely. So along that line, I think a lot of what we want to go through, and I think to the testing and all of that, is a lot of our schools use TPRM, third-party risk management, before you're even allowed to put something on the network. And Vinny, you were almost kind of alluding to that as well, kind of testing it on your own kind of internal, box before throwing it out. So I guess talk about kind of a process or best practices as far as, and Vinny, I'll go back to you on this first, for integrating, even not just any particular device, but even just an AV over IP, to make sure that we could pass that, those TPRM processes.
I would say, like the real estate agent would say, location, location, location. I would say test, 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 right? Have a test environment or a dev environment for yourself, or both, if you can afford that. Make sure that you are working with your IT security teams and putting the stuff on the network, running it by yourself, making sure you are up to date on all the software patching and everything, and then confirming with your IT team that this will work on the production network.
Absolutely. Nick, kind of the same idea and the importance of that, and kind of how you go about, the process into.
Yeah, I think it all starts and ends with patching. Vinny's 100% right. Making sure that your endpoints are at the latest version that have been tested, and avoid risk of 0 days or any sort of known issues that might pop in through just common usage. In terms of TPRM, just also reputable vendors, I think, is a huge deal too. Like making sure that manufacturers are up to the standards that most people like, and they have all the proper paperwork to highlight their security protocols and processes they have as a partner and as a vendor.
Okay, so along those lines, then next, let's say we decide we want to do it. I know Aaron put in here of which not one we wouldn't want to use AV over IP. Can you help kind of guide people? I'm going to say every time, so I can't even think of an example where you wouldn't, so I'm a bad person to ask. But where do you make the decision of why you want to do, where would you not? And then make the decision to kind of go with it. So Nick, to yourself.
I would say the main one is probably raw uncompressed video data is the big one, where you might not want, because those files and those packets are so large. It's really hard to size that properly and scale that out. So anything uncompressed, anything raw, I would definitely lean towards using such an air-gapped infrastructure to support that, to avoid risking impacting the rest of the traffic around the network.
Vinny?
I'm with you on this, Joe. If somebody tells me not to, I think the onus is on them to tell me why not, instead of me telling them why, right? Because that's kind of where technology is heading. So there are more chances of us putting the stuff on the network tomorrow, even if it's not there today. I would still, even if I was asked to do that, I would still keep in mind that in future there might be a need for that. I have been asked to do that in the past, and the reason was basically that they did not have the enough network security to put the stuff on the network. So, yep.
Awesome. Andrew, did you have any comments out there where you wouldn't? Because you probably deal with that all the time talking to customers.
I do actually. So from my perspective, I would say that there are a few things that are kind of in that decision tree between circuit switched and packet switched. One of them is actually not a technology decision. From my perspective, it's what does your internal support staff look like? Are they trained and are they going to be able to support a network? Do they have any of that familiarity with the IT side of the organization? Do they have those strong relationships to get the support they need? If that isn't there to back them up or to have that foundational knowledge themselves, then that's going to be a tough road to hoe with an AV over IP solution, and they might want to consider a circuit switched solution in that instance. Another thing that we see, as Nick mentioned, the uncompressed side of things. I'd like to expand on it, and not just the uncompressed video, but as we start getting into USB data, you're starting to see things like 5 gig, 10 gigs of USB data having to be distributed through a facility. And there's really not a way that you can compress that USB data to get down that 1 gigabit network connection. And so you might be forced into either a standalone circuit switched solution because you're trying to route USB data on top of that 18 gigs of video data, or you might decide to go into a hybrid type application where maybe in each of your classrooms, those become smaller islands where you have localized switching systems, but you have some inputs and outputs from that local island of sources and destinations that do touch your AV over IP distribution system, so that now instead of totally isolated classroom spaces, they're now nodes on your network and they're still reachable. You can still poll them, you can still support them, but just in a more manageable sense.
Yeah. Those are all great reasons not to, but don't listen to any of them. Just use AV over IP. Okay, that was great. We did it. We checked the box. Aaron did put some other good things in here as well. Sync videos, large resolutions. I was going to invite you, Aaron, to come off of mute if you wanted to add some color to this.
Yeah, so I work for Mech9. For those of you who don't know what Mech9 does, we do a lot of virtual reality, large scale production type systems. And a lot of the stuff that we deal with requires multiple perfectly synced video signals from the source to the display. And so anytime you have that, a lot of computers need to generate those perfectly synced signals. If you have any sort of jitter in the video signals of one over the other, the left eye and the right eye aren't going to line up. Or if you have multiple PCs generating a large canvas, so you have more than a 4K signal or something on a large canvas, and you're using AV over IP to distribute those signals from the source to the sink, going through an AV over IP system, that's probably not going to look good. It might have a lot of tearing because you can't always perfectly sync those signals. I know esports is being a lot of really big thing right now. A lot of some AV over IP can go up to 120 hertz, but I know a lot of gamers like to run their stuff at 144 hertz. Well, you can't, even if it's 1080p, a lot of general AV over IP stuff can struggle with that. That's really a big thing. And yeah, like I said, if you have multiple sources on a single canvas, there are some encoders and stuff that can send the smaller truncated image to do some basic windowing on some displays. But overall, if you need to, again, increase some of that bandwidth and things from, if you have a dedicated windower, to go from the windower to your displays, I usually find it better to have just standard extension over cat cables using HD-base-T or some of those products, rather than re-encoding it over with AV over IP for that larger canvas.
Right. See, there you go. You got your cameo. And again, everyone, but just don't listen to AV over IP. Just kidding. No,
One-to-one AV over IP, I'm a huge fan. If you're doing general single source to single display at resolutions under 4K, yeah, great solution. Compressed video works great for probably 90% plus of the issues that you guys are having, for sure.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. All right, now back to where we were. With that, also everyone, we've got 15 minutes left. If you have questions for the wise people on the call, please do add questions into the chat, and we'll be glad to take them because I'm sure there are going to be better questions than I have asked throughout this point. Here we go. Oh, in there. So got it. All right, let's go on now. Supporting an AV over IP system because now we've got it in, we've decided to do it. Kind of a little bit here. You obviously talked about patching already. I also think too, one of the risks that I'm gonna answer my own question. A lot of times, and we see this especially in colleges, maybe UCLA at the point right now, when you have a lot of old systems, we like to install and walk away. You can't do that if you're doing something that's sitting on a network, right? Especially if you're going back to the cybersecurity issue, right? You can't just install it and then go, okay, I'll come back in 5 years and when it's end of life and put something new in. You have continual maintenance you have to do when you're doing things and putting things on a network. So Nick, to you first, then supporting best practice for supporting an AV over IP system.
I think another benefit of putting endpoints on an AV network is you kind of open up other technologies that are more sort of web network friendly, things like web GUIs and APIs, where you have more ease of connectability and sort of better support experience directly to the endpoints because there's more tools to use based on having that reachability too. So cloud management portals are really big. All devices these days seem to be broadening their REST API capabilities, where we can have the device send data to a centralized tool set to gather analytics or alerting issues or even logging information. So I think just the more web-friendly, almost developer tools that are being pushed on AV endpoints now because they're now on an IP network. An API, application programmer interface, which is essentially a method for an endpoint to send information to another endpoint for various use cases.
Yeah, I'm gonna double click on what you just said there about APIs, and it means what you said it did. One of the things I think is the advantage of, and one of the advantages of AV over IP is not just content, moving content from one device to another or move it, but once you can now work on that API level, you can actually collect the data, and maybe that's another conversation to have. You can get all of the control and all the monitoring, not just whatever that driver or whatever has, right? You actually get an extra level of being able to connect one device to another. So, and I know we do that at UCLA. In fact, that is one of your roles. Can you talk about that? Those added benefits that maybe that an actual networked and programmable system can do, as opposed to just a legacy on that.
Yeah, I mean, well, having access to that data in near real time and being able to capture and essentially aggregate it opens up a ton of variable use cases. Right now, we're architecting a solution where we essentially building a looking glass to see how lecture capture is behaving in all of our classrooms, and having sort of that one pane of glass by capturing data from all these different endpoints across the room, across the campus, all in a single location where our operators can understand exactly what's happening in near real time to the solution to empower the lectures in class.
Right. Then it kind of same things to you there.
Sure. So I feel this day and age, analytics is everywhere. Everybody is pushing data to us, right? So the biggest thing for me is dashboarding, right? We need to make sure that all the data that's coming in, it is represented or presented to the actual support people in a way where it's more digestible and they can understand that data, because knowledge is power, right? That's the old saying. But understanding that mumbo jumbo that's coming in, and then making sure whatever's the high priority that moves up in in your list of items in your dashboard. I think that's more important. So at USC in last, I would say, year and a half, we have implemented a couple of dashboards which does help our support team to see and visualize exactly what needs to be worked on at this moment, right? Another thing that we run here is the scripts at night. So scripts do the same thing, right? They go and parse devices, make sure they're up and running at nighttime. And in the morning, you have it populated into a dashboard, right? Where support team can come in and then implement those changes to the system.
Yeah, and by the way, I love looking at dashboards, especially I'll say this from kind of department leader and my bosses, we have a little dashboard thing on our thing. I love seeing those little green dots, and I love seeing a 99.999. Like those make me sleep well at night. But those are also easy ways to share up to our leadership as well, and giving those dashboards that can really be customizable now to the point of what do certain people care about, right? And to be able to share that and get the right, red flags, for example, to know, we always say that it's better to kind of know the system is down before our users call it in, right? Which is the biggest thing in old legacy systems, right? You didn't know that. We didn't have eyes into it to then say, hey, by the way, even if it's not down, at least get, hey, this isn't pinging back to me. This has been offline for X number of hours. So we can get there first thing in the morning. And I think we might, both of the schools are kind of set up in the same way of having an early group to say, okay, early in the morning, we walk in, what's been pinged off, what hasn't. We at UCLA, I know even our systems ping into our Slack channel, when they go offline. So the, Ann's group, when they get in the morning, can go and kind of triage before anyone's ever shown up, right? Eliminates tickets, eliminates, well, I guess technically the same number of tickets, but it eliminates the disturbance of classroom time, right? By knowing that ahead of time. So Vinny, back to you then on this. As I know we're kind of coming up on time. I don't see any questions here, which means I've asked all the great ones. So I appreciate that, everybody. That again, so just kind of I'm going to go almost as a closing thing here for you. Just best, I don't want to say best tip, but give advice, tips, etc. for people. If everyone needs to know one thing as they walk away from this to remember and take back, what is that thing?
I would say that would be coming up with or listening to the customer and then coming up with the real problems that need to be solved, right? We have a lot of technology out there, a lot of trends, and instead of us shoving the technology down the throats of faculty and students, I think we should go and listen to them, do the surveys, make sure first understand the problems, and then apply the right solutions from that pool of new technology items that are coming in. So one thing I would say is listen to the to the customers. In our case, faculty and students. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. But I'm going to follow back up on that.
Uh,
Our students and faculty aren't going to say, I want AV over IP. They're not going to say it, right? They don't know
yep.
different. So how do you make that change? How do you listen to them and then go, no, this is the solution you need? What makes that decision for you?
Desired outcomes, right? So the way we work on that is we look at their desired outcome. What is it that you want, right? They want X, Y, Z. Based on that, as an architect, as an engineer, it's my role to figure out which technology will best fit their desired outcome, and hence the problem, the set of problems, the pool of problems that you have, they come with set of desired outcomes that they need from that, and that's how we align the technology with that. Um, I I would give you a lot of examples if we had more time, but I want to give you one example. So, for example, in our library here, a lot of students they were complaining the main tables in the library were not giving them enough power, right? So we did the survey. We ran about 300 touch points on that. A lot of people that came back, the issue was that their USB-C ports were broken. They were not able to plug in their devices in there. So once you run the survey, you find the real problem, and then you can apply a solution where we added extra USB-C ports on their tables. We bought the new tables and we installed those in there. That solved the problem. We ran the survey again to just get the feedback. and boom, it was good to go. I think Will can also vouch for that. Will was there.
Love that. Nick, same thing to you. What's the takeaway everyone needs to know?
I think I'll just double click on what's already said. I mean, essentially, we're moving our technology into another IT colleague's world with moving the application of AV onto the network. So building that relationship with the network team, understanding their concerns, understanding their problems, and really working together to make sure that it is designed correctly, that accommodates both people's concerns, and kind of keeping that partnership going as the technology evolves and scales out.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. And I'll give my little takeaway. And we didn't really touch it on it yet, but there's one thing I hear from our peers all the time is, oh, I'm afraid to go do networked stuff because what if the network goes down? Okay, well, here's the first thing. The network goes down, no one's calling the classroom support person. Okay, they don't care. There's bigger issues going on if the network goes down. Because Wi-Fi is down, payment systems are down, access controls. Like there's a lot of things that happen first that no one cares about our classrooms if the network goes down. That said, one of the things that we did too, in fact, we did it at SC when we first put in our system, we've done it at UCLA, is we did our big thing and we shut the network down. It's like, well, we might as well test and see what happens. Let's shut them all down. And here's what happens. Like any other AV system, it just stays in the last known state. So if you were showing, if you had the laptop plugged in, and that's it, that's just where it stays, so it doesn't mean everything goes black just because the network goes down, right? They're still usable systems that send, things back and forth. So I think that's something that people need to understand. It's not as big of a risk as you think. And if that worst case scenario does happen, no one's calling you anyway. Because why? Because it's all Zoom phone and they can't because that's networked. So it doesn't matter. Right. So there you go. One last question for you both, and I do want you both to put your emails in the chat. This coming Tuesday, USC and UCLA are playing basketball at Pauley Pavilion. What is the final score of that game? Vinny, final score.
You asked me, if you would have asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have had a better answer. It's I think UCLA pulls it out, but I don't see it being a high scoring game.
Okay. All right, Vinny.
I wish I could answer that. I'm not a sports person. I'm a geek. So ask me about technology. I'll be able to answer that. But sports, I'm sorry.
How many pixels on the scoreboard are going to go out? No.
Give me a multiple choice question. How about that? I'll pick one from there.
Okay. All right. USC wins by 10. USC wins by 1. UCLA wins by 1. UCLA wins by 10.
USC wins. So for sure, right? 1 or 10, right?
All right. Oh, 87. Carrie, there you go. That's a good one. I like it. All right. That's 87. That's probably a little bit high. It's a little high for the input, but we'll go with it. UCLA not by much. I'll agree with that. Good game. We just want a good game. All right. That being said, they've got, thank you both for coming on. Their emails are in the chat. You can reach out. These are two of the smartest people I know on this topic. So, and I'm sure they will both be willing to help you and walk you through any questions and jump on a Zoom call with you and go through your things and help out there. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Vinny. In 1 minute, we have Higher AV Happy Hour. We have completed, and I think probably Aaron's going to hop back on, or I'm just going to keep winging it. We have completed day 1 of our session. So a big round of applause for everybody. Thank you all very, very, very much.